a lot, you know. She got earrings that say "fuck the police,"
It does.
you know, and she all these things, and I'm over here like, classes are killing me. um, so
You know,
yeah.
um, yeah, I want to like backtrack just a little, as to like what you said. Something when like folks say like, oh, politics, I'm not too political, and then it's like, you at first when I wasn't like in this mindset, yeah, I was like, all right, doesn't affect them, it's okay. But then, you know, you kind of dive into it a little bit more and you're like, oh, well, of course you don't care about politics because it doesn't affect you. It's like, you're white, like of course it's not going to do anything to you. And then it's like you start to like piece things together. Well, it affects me, it affects my people, it affects my community. And it's, I think like when I had that realization, it just hit me in the face. I was like, oh shit. And like even like going into Cal City, going into Cal City, I had this idea of wanting to be an astrobiologist. I don't know why. I hate math and I can't do science. So I don't know why. I was like, in my brain, I was like, yeah, that's what I want to do. But and then I remember taking my first Chicanx studies class, and that shit hit me in the face. I was like, it was like the entire class was telling me, you're brown and then you have not even realized that, like, you're not white.
Dude,
I felt so like blindsided. It was in my face, but it like still wasn't in my face, and I was just like, I couldn't understand. I was like, how did I let this brainwash get to me so far? And it,
right.
like, how did it take until college for me to start really like reading myself in some way, you know? I knew that I was different, but I didn't know to what extent that different was, if that made sense. And I remember like even just being 12 and growing up with my family, because I'm not adopted, but I grew up with a predominantly white family through marriage and stuff like that. My family still remains in Mexico, but when my tia came over here, she married a white man. And because we didn't have any family here, they kind of just adopted us into the family, and we just became as one, right? And so my whole life I thought of them as family, and I still do. But it wasn't until I was 12 when I was like, wait, hold up. I'm brown.
You brown girl.
Yeah. And all these people are white. And I was like, wait a second. Make this make sense. I'm like, but they're family. But then I was like, oh, wait, let's dive into it a little deeper. We're family through marriage, not like blood related.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like this whole unpacking of my identity through the years. And I think like college, which sucks to some certain extent that I had to figure myself out through college, which to me, it's like so late in my years. I was like 18.
Oh, girl, no.
Yeah, I know. I feel like we should have had those realizations at such a young age, you know?
Yes.
Way younger. And I just realized that I forgot to say what I identify as. We're on a good roll here. I do identify myself as a Chicana, but I do also identify myself as a reconnecting Indigenous person. Indigenous from Mexico. I do come from the nation, the Chichimeca Nation. And I'm trying to piece myself together within that world from myself and understanding. Because even just getting into college, I couldn't understand why I didn't have a race. And I feel like a lot of us, quote unquote, Hispanics and Latinos have a hard time trying to understand that too. Because because of colonization, of course, there's like this mix of indigenous, white, and also black. And just growing up, I never understood why people would say that I identify as white when I never navigated as a white person, never was perceived as one. So yes, this is where we're at.
Yeah, no, I like that you pointed out, like, they told me, like, here I am, you brown girl, but like,
I know,
because that's literally what I got from too, like my teacher, and it helped because she grew up on the res. I just did my like paper on the my final for research in history, and I forgot to mention my major. It's also history. Yeah, this is going great. But and so it helped us a lot because even though she was also identifying as Chicana, she grew up on a res with a lot of, in Yakima, which is up north for people who don't know, in Washington. And she talked, on and on about that. Like, even though her parents are from Zacatecas, Mexico, she grew up on the res, so she had the Native American experience, but through the lens of, a Chicana woman. And so it was very interesting the way she taught. It was very, I always tell her, like, your confidence was so contagious. Like, it just made me like, I want to be like her. Why is she so confident and proud and just so good at teaching? She pours out her heart to you and tells you, yo, like, being brown is dope. It's like,
Yeah.
it's cool. And you come from such a rich history that even though, like how you're saying, I wish it was taught to me at a younger age. I mean, it's taught to you now, and people have been fighting and, bleeding and protesting and starving for us to
Mm-hmm.
have these classes where they're not implemented everywhere yet, all across the US, but it's starting to. Oxnard Unified School District just did it, where they made it a requirement. And I was there when they were, you know, in the room where they were voting on it. So being part of that history was very beautiful and rich to me. But how you were saying, it's like how they say the nopal en tu frente, right? It's like everybody knows you're brown except you, boo. It's like, and because, like I said, even though my school was predominantly brown, we still, as girls, I remember my homegirl, she would wear colored eye contacts. I would bleach my skin. And then because of Chicano studies, right, we got into writing. And then finally I was exposed to women of color, right? And I was like, oh shit, like, they're good. Why is it, that I'm just reading about Gloria Anzaldúa, Denise Froman, Sunny Patterson, and the list goes on and on. And so then I wrote poems, and that's what helped me kind of like unpack this, right? It was like, what do you call it? Like, people call it like ghetto therapy, right? I mean, it's not, but it's like, it's cheap therapy, and it still is, right? And so I remember at our first Chicano summit, I read my poem out loud, right, as like a thank you to my professor, and there was like 200 people there, mind you, and I cried. And I hate crying in front of people, but then I was like, bitch, why did I cry? I practiced this poem like 5 times. And then my sister, and then with her telling me, and then my realization, it's like, you're healing. You have a wound in you. You were very whitewashed, and you didn't know why. And that was the big one. It's like, I didn't know why. My girlfriends, all Latina, they really wanted blonde hair, wanting that light skin complexion. And then here there are, like, prom comes around, and white girls are trying to spray fake melanin, trying to look like me. And so then that's where it started to, you pick up this shit really quick. And then, of
Mm-hmm.
course, with Chicano studies, that just helped me. And it said, oh, this is where that comes from. This is where that idea stems from. And how, colonization. And I'm like, wow, because I'm brown, but I'm not that dark. And I was the darkest in my family. So a lot of the times, people would say, like, don't, in summertime, don't go out in the sun too long. You don't want to get too
Mm-hmm.
dark. And so there was a lot to unpack from that. We can just make a whole episode reserved for that, because colorism, yes, I felt that. And then,
Yes.
of course, having the biggest hair in my family, curly hair runs. And so I would straighten my hair, and I just wanted to be this, like, Barbie doll, because again, representation, luckily now I'm 23 and I'm seeing it way, way more, magazines of these beautiful women of color, Afro Latinas, Black women, brown women, indigenous women, that we're finally seeing on magazines and platforms, where that didn't exist when I was younger. And I wish it did, but it's unfortunate, because beauty did not look like me. I did not see it. It was not represented, and definitely not like
It's
you,
true.
right? Wider noses, more indigenous
Mm-hmm.
features. My sister, same thing. And so, yeah, that was, beauty was a whole thing to unpack. Um, and so, yeah, like how you said, it's like, learning that you're brown, because here's the thing. Yeah, we had posadas and tamales during Christmas, and I grew up around young women who were having quinceañeras. That part of my culture was there. I knew Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
But put it to you this way, where a high school teacher, Mr. Torres, was like in 11th grade, and he said, because I made fun of him, I was like, "What? You don't know Spanish?" And he's like, I may have lost the tongue, but you lost the culture. And I was like, what does that mean? And then I implemented that in my poem because it was like, I may have kept my tongue, but I lost my culture. And then later to find out that Spanish is not the language my ancestors spoke, right? And so that was a lot to unpack. And I was like, damn, like that's part of my culture, sort of, at least like in the Latinidad experience, but not in, what do you say, like not indigenous, like your indigeneity. And so yeah, that's it's still a learning experience. It's not like, okay, one class, you're done, you
Yeah.
got all your roots, you're
No.
perfect. No, it's like people are still working on their PhDs and still unlearning all this stuff, and then
Yes.
learning how to teach that to the younger folks. And so
Yeah.
luckily I was blessed with people who kept on and really fought for those cultural, like, languages. Like I don't even know my native language. I haven't even stepped foot onto Mexico yet since I was like 3. So the fact that, like, how Anita, because I follow her on Instagram, she was able to go this year. So like that was really cool. I hope to visit there someday too, because I
Mm.
have family there too, and it's also from Guanajuato, but from San Francisco del Rincon. So it's like very, very
Bestie, what?
oh my god, we're related. But so yeah, and so but also like how this
Yeah.
podcast will also focus on, because we're so large, is that, and chicana can mean many things for different
Mhm.
women, is that what's it like living here in white spaces, and take looking like us and taking up white spaces, and
Mhm.
creating, and even though the table never included us, how do we create new conversations and create new spaces for us where we do feel welcome, right? And so
Mhm.
that's my biggest takeaway from this, is I hope we can create that for other people as well, for other people who listen and they're like, oh shit, like I'm Afro Latina and I totally relate to this,
Mhm.
or I'm half, whatever you are. It's like, um if you can relate to this, and you're like,
Yes.
this is me, then this is for you.
Yes.
Really, that's at the end of the day. But yeah, what do you want to say, some last pieces?
If it resonates with you, it's because it's you.
Yeah.
What it is. And the realities are is that we're facing, still people like to say post-colonial times, but no, we're
Hmm.
still in colonial times. We're facing like 500 plus years of erasure of our people and our languages. Not to everyone, of course, because of course in our existence there's resistance, right? But for many like indigenous cultures, much of our culture was erased to some certain degree. Not genetically, of course, genetics was still there, but culturally we were erased, and that's certain realities that some of us also have to face, and it hurts, when I backtrack to like the Chichimeca Nation. I say Chichimeca Nation because I cannot pinpoint a tribe that I'm part of just yet.
Hmm.
I'm still trying to piece that together, form a family tree, and it's been really hard because records have also been lost because of colonization. So it's this like almost, I know that that's who I am. I know that's where my roots come from, but it's also having to digest the fact that I might not ever know definitively
Right.
who my tribe was, and it hurts. But it's also, I wanted to backtrack a little bit out as to like what you said, even though we were part of schools that might have had predominantly Latinx, quote unquote, and Hispanic students, most of us were still, or not all of us, but some of us were still so heavily colonized that we wanted to be what was on the screens. We wanted to be blonde, we wanted to have fair skin, we wanted all these things. And I realized that when I know I'm on TikTok, so I created a TikTok and someone pointed it out. Someone that I went to school with, and she happens to be white, and she was like, well, we went to a predominantly like Latinx and Hispanic school, like kind of like, what are you talking about,
Yeah, what was the issue?
Yeah, and then I was like, I like started dissecting that, and I was like, there was accuracy in what she was saying, yet how did I feel that there was just so much whiteness around me? And it was that thinking, of wanting to be someone else who I wasn't. I remember that I wanted to wear hoodies so the sun wouldn't touch my skin, so I would become more lighter complected. I wanted to dye my hair. I wanted to you know, just be all these different things. And even